You're listening to Learning Leader Spotlight, interviews with corporate L&D leaders. On each episode, we sit down with key industry experts to discover more about what's happening in the world of learning and development, from current trends and insights to the most valuable lessons learned along the way. Join us for a fresh perspective on all things training and the best direction forward.
Welcome to Learning Leader Spotlight, where we interview the learning leaders of today to help the learning leaders of tomorrow. I'm your host, Tracy D. Lufkin, Relationship Manager with Training Pros, the sponsor of this podcast. Training Pros is a learning and development contract staffing company. We like to say, when you have more projects than people, let us help you find the best consultant to start your project with confidence. Today, I'm joined by Demetrice Bryant, a senior learning customer enablement leader at Priceline, where she has led areas including customer experience, quality, knowledge management, instructional design, and training delivery. Demetrice and I connected through the learning community and quickly bonded over how much the L&D space has evolved. She brings both a strong business lens and a real passion for helping others grow and stay relevant in this changing field. Welcome, Demetrice.
Thank you so much for having me, Tracy. I'm
Yes,
really excited to be here. This is
we're so
awesome.
excited to have you. Can you start off by sharing a 60-second overview of what you do?
I am the senior director for the enablement function at Priceline.com. And so what that means is I take all of the cool things that you would engage with as a customer, and I simplify those things in a way that help our sales and service teams to be able to assist customers when they're purchasing trips or when they are have purchased a trip but need help maybe getting to that next connection. It's really a great opportunity for me because this industry was brand new to me. I mean, I got the opportunity to learn and grow as a learning and development leader. So really excited to be here at Priceline.
That's awesome because we all have experienced that.
Great.
We need that support with those tools for sure.
Absolutely. Every
So what first drew you into learning and development?
So it's an interesting story. I started out pre-med at Emory University, and one day I woke up and said, I am not going to be able to do more school. And it was close to the coming of my senior year, and I quickly pivoted to sociology, and that led me to teaching children with autism. And I worked for a private school, and it was fantastic. But unfortunately, I had to make some hard life choices for, of course, personal and financial reasons. And I went to work in state government. While I was there, they did some implementations. And during one of the implementations, a member of the class was struggling deeply with some concepts. And it was that moment of, okay, we have to move beyond this question because she kept asking the same question over and over again. I raised my hand and asked the trainer, who was also a supervisor, at the time, could I help? And he said, go for it, and flipped the flip chart over, diagrammed what I thought he was explaining, gave it some color and some information that I thought might help her to understand. And I looked at him and I said, was that correct? He said, absolutely. I looked at her and I said, did that help? Do you now understand? She said, yes, that was great. And I said, thank you, for two reasons. Sat down and he said, you should be a trainer. I said, what's that? He said, we'll talk about it later. I said, does it pay more? He said, yes. And I said, I'll take it. And that began back in like 1998, my career path in the world of training. It was awesome.
Oh, that's awesome. So what do you think that early background gave you that still shows up in how you lead today?
Patience. Anytime you're working with children, they will teach you patience. So it gave me some, just core skills with regard to patience, but it also helped me to understand how to take what could be a complex concept
Yeah.
and break it down to its fundamentals in a way that whether you understand the material or not, you're able to grasp the concept and put it into action. The coolest thing about working with children with disabilities is everything that you're teaching them and that they're learning, they have to be able to do. And that's essentially what our jobs are, is to teach people, adults in this situation, not children, how to do things. And so I think it gave me the foundation of how do I break things down? How do I make them simple? And how do I create this actionable moment for the other person? So I'm really grateful for that opportunity.
Oh, yes, yes, that's wonderful, and with all that you've seen in the field, which you've seen, like the field change a lot, what
Right.
are the biggest shifts that stand out to you?
I think the technology shifts and the upskill phenomenons in tandem have really stood out the most to me. You and I probably were there when there was just a flip chart page and a marker. And then they brought in those transparencies. I remember staying up to odd hours of the night printing those out for the next day for the projectors. And then all of a sudden, someone said one day, "Hey, here's a floppy disk, and here's a PowerPoint," and we figured that out too. And then you fast forward to e-learning and some of the early tools with that. And now we are doing agentic development and asynchronous learning in a very unique and different way. And so I think the key or the biggest transformation has been as all of these things, technology and upskilling, have come to exist in the workplace, we've had to grow and adapt, and we've essentially become different in our profession and in our field.
I would agree, yes, and I think you mentioned when we spoke earlier too about human-centered design
Mhm.
and that's even more important now. Can you share a little more on that?
Because we're not designing for technology, we're designing for the person on the other side of it. Human-centered design has never been more important. On a daily basis, we're asking people to interact with things that may be a little bit uncomfortable, could be a little
Mm,
scary, also. So human-centered design, honestly, we've been doing it this entire time. Someone just gave it a cool name, and I love the name.
yes.
Human-centered design has become the center or central to everything we're doing, not just in terms of instructional design or in the training classroom, but also when it comes to how we're designing our processes and how we're integrating all of this new and innovative technology into the workspace.
Mhm.
You're designing for that people moment and that head and heart moment, and you're designing to ensure that you both garner and maintain the trust of those that you're working with.
So important, so critical. So let's look ahead a little bit. When you look ahead 2 to 3 years, maybe even 5 years, where do you see L&D going?
I see the shift to learning technology and, your core instructional designers becoming learning technologists and your facilitators becoming more of enablement functions where they're enabling people as they learn and flow. So I see a huge shift in just how we prepare the individual, both from a technology perspective as well as in how we get people to the work that they need to complete. And to be very clear, what a learning technologist looks like, a learning technologist is now taking those live events and creating experiences that teach individuals how you want them to react in that next moment.
Mm,
It's automation, it's interaction, it's going beyond core simulation to actually in being in the moment almost
mhm,
with
mhm.
how you begin to acquire skills.
And they work closely with those user experience folks that specialize in how to make the user experience positive, and so it's all kinda tied together, which
It's
is
all tied
interesting.
together. We've always done UX and UI, and we
Mhm,
didn't really realize it when we were creating those PowerPoint slides and those transparencies and those flip charts that we worked on. We were creating a user experience, but now that user experience is live and you can touch it, you can feel it, you can interact with it. It's interesting that we're saying that these are new skills. I don't think necessarily that they're new skills. I think what's happening is we're taking what is the foundation of what we've always done and just
mhm.
powering it with some really cool tools so that it becomes more dynamic and even more interactive for the individual.
So you mentioned skills. What skills do people need now to stay relevant?
I think, and this is going to sound real cheesy, but the skill that is most important for us today is continuous learning.
Mhm,
As practitioners, we're capable of doing anything. I mean, we have the coolest job in the world. I tell people this, when I try to describe to my family what I do, because nobody gets it, right? And I say, people tell me what they know and what they're really good at. And I put it into a different framework and tell others how to be or do the things that they know and that they're really good at. And they were like, "Well, why couldn't that person just do that?" And I was like, "Because you have to break it down into a way that makes sense for that individual because everybody grasps information differently."
They do.
And so that makes sense and that kind of resonates for them. And so our ability to learn is there because we learn things all the time that we know nothing about. We simplify it and we make it easy for others to ingest and to learn from. So if you can learn, if you have that skill, this next phase of technology, this next phase of skill building, this next phase of learning and development will come very easy to you. If you hold on to the old ways, if you hold on too much to what has been our history, not embracing the history and moving it forward into this new space, then it's going to be harder for you. It's going to be a lot
Mm.
harder.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And people learn differently, and generations learn differently, or come about things differently too. So that's all plays a factor.
I still believe there will be training delivery. It's just now it's called enablement partnerships, right?
I love that enablement partnership. So that's the one thing. That's one thing you said that really stuck with me is training is evolving into more of an enablement function. Can you talk about what that shift looks like in practice?
Yeah, it's a shift from core learning to change creation, right? You're creating change within individuals and workspaces and cultures, but also workforce strategy. So now we have to look at what is the strategy that supports this new evolution of whatever the thing is we're being asked to implement into the organization. And we're focusing more on not just how do you click, but how do you click with purpose and how do you begin to enable this person to do the thing that takes it to the next level for that customer or for that employee, whatever the space may be that you're working in.
How should learning leaders be thinking differently because of that?
I think they have to not necessarily focus so much on instructional knowledge, but innovation, creativity, honestly, that change mindset. To be completely transparent, it's really about the change mindset and how well do you adapt to change and how well do you help others move through those change cycles that we know exists whenever we make big or small changes.
Yeah, change is difficult, reinvention especially.
Absolutely. And that's a part of that enablement part, right? That
Hmm.
enablement component of where we're going. It's not just about going into the classroom and telling people, here's what you need to know and here's who we are. It's about empowering them and making sure that becomes a part of their daily work and who they are in the organization.
And do you think there's like, could you say that there's a certain type or personality or age group that's going to have the biggest adjustment ahead of them in the industry right now?
Honestly, and this is gonna sound really, really corny, but I think everyone will adapt because the world is requiring that we adapt. The world says you will use these things. You can't call your cable company, you can't pay a bill. You really can't even walk down the street at this point without interacting with some of this stuff or not experiencing it in some way. So I think it'll be easier than what we're thinking it will be for most people. Groups that may struggle with some of it will be your newly workforce entering groups, your latest generations,
Hmm.
mostly because the way that they've been taught to do things in school don't necessarily align today to what we will ask them to do once they enter the workspace.
And that's
Um,
always been a problem, but even more so now,
it's
right?
even more so now because
Yeah.
because we're not teaching in the same way, and so there's this expectation of being able to guide and monitor, and we may or may not have taught in a way that says that that person has that skill. Not that they can't acquire it, but we didn't teach them that at the core and at the foundation. I think educational institutions really need to begin to align their curriculum to better provide that preparation that
Hmm.
generation needs in order to make that transition a little bit smoother and a little bit easier for them. And you to your point, we've always struggled with it. It's very different now. And then when it comes to those who are kind of still hanging around, some of my mom's friends are still hanging out there in the workforce. For them, they're kind of excited about the technology and they want to learn, they want to use it. So I think they'll be okay. Those who
Yeah.
don't will opt out, but those who stay behind, some of our friends, they're loving it. They're loving the
Mhm.
learning. They're loving that things can be easier than what they have experienced in the past.
I've witnessed that too. It's exciting to see that. I have a lot of folks that are even better at some social media than I am, and they've got the time to spend on it too. So they'll work, spend time until they figure it out.
They yeah, I was amazed when one of our friends, he's about 90 now, he's like, "Yeah, I was on TikTok," and I was like, Wait, what? You're"
That's great. Not that mentors are usually older, but I'm going to transition into mentors, influential mentors. But who has been one of the most influential mentors in your career?
Marvin Bailey. And he was the person who, like, hired me in my first, what I call, real leadership role. So he hired me to be his director of staff development. And I remember leaving the interview saying, I know I didn't get that job, but I now know what I need to do the next time and I will prepare and I will be ready. And when the recruiter called me to talk about next steps, I was floored. I mean, I was floored and I called my then mentor and said, "Guess what? I got it." Because I just talked to her and said I didn't get that.
Yeah.
So she was like, "Wait, what? What's happening?" And so, I explained to her, and she was so excited for me, and she handed me off to him. Um,
Oh, nice.
and that was way back in 2007, and he's still my mentor. He and his
Oh,
wife, they're an amazing team. I won't even call them a couple. They are an amazing team. She's a professor at the University of Georgia. He's now retired. And one of the things he said to me, he said, "I didn't hire you for things that I couldn't help you with. I hired you for the things that you could bring to the organization that we don't have help with, and you had those things. So just remember that." And it kind of changed my perspective on hiring too, because I
hmm
think I up until that point, I thought the person had to have it all. And
hmm
that's and he said if you find the perfect candidate, they're probably overqualified and not going to stay very long.
And there's that.
Also,
Yep.
so he wanted to make sure that I understood growth, but he also wanted me to understand the operations and that learning and staff development and talent development wasn't just about all of the theories that we had been taught in school. Because at that point, I had gone back and gotten some education in my field of training and talent. But he said it's not just about that. That is important. That is core to what you have to do. But you'll have real impact when you understand what those things mean in business strategy and how to make sure that they continue to transform and elevate the overall business. And so and he coached me for about 2.5 years before he retired. He coached me in those areas. And I'm so grateful because now I don't just tell a story of we completed 100% of the training. The story is everyone completed training and here's how it affected our CSAT score, or here's how it
Exactly.
affected our revenue, or here's how it impacted our overall refund status. Like those are the stories that I now understand how to tell that I wouldn't have had I not had that experience.
Oh, yeah, that's one really important lesson that is relevant, so relevant in for L&D in general, today.
Absolutely.
And we have a seat at the table now where we used to not back when, thanks to our fighters that have gotten those seats for us. So, having that close to the business, right, is the important thing.
Absolutely. I used to say, call me when you're ready. Now I say, call me.
Right?
Just call me.
Exactly. It's that's important for sure. So let's think about you have so much advice to give and so much wisdom for someone either early in their L&D career or someone more experienced. Take your pick. What would you tell them right now?
Stay curious, continue learning. Most of all, understand industry shifts. If you understand what's happening in the world, in industries, and then overall in your specific space, you're going to remain relevant, you're going to remain competitive, but more than anything, you're going to have some fun. If you're relevant, you're getting to do things that most people aren't doing. So those things are so important. Don't just read content in your space. Don't just go to conferences about learning and development. Go to things about the industries that you're most curious about, right? Read outside of the norm and then create forums where you can tie it back to learning and development and have conversations about it. Get into a good LinkedIn group where you can post and blog back and forth about it and really grow in your mindset. Growth in mindset is probably the one skill that I don't talk about, but it's also a very important skill. And it's different than your ability to learn. Growth in mindset means that you're able to continuously iterate your thinking in a way that means something within an organization or within an industry or culture.
Oh, definitely. We just had a SIG
Mhm.
group with our HED. So it's a special group. They focus on one area and it was growth mindset. And so we
Uh-huh.
had 6 sessions on growth mindset. And I learned so much about it's more than just growth mindset. There's a lot of different ways to look at it. It's mindset in general, but to your point, it's key to just to everything. I think it's the heart of everything.
It really is. People always laugh at me because I have a different hobby every other month. So my hobby is having hobbies. It's not necessarily about the hobbies. It's about the curiosity and wanting to continue to grow and understand and meet new people and talk about things that I wouldn't talk about if I just stayed in my circle.
Yeah, agreed, agreed. Well, you mentioned a couple really good resources to go to for information, but where do you go to stay informed and continue growing?
So definitely training pros in ATD and a lot of L&D specific blogs and magazines and information. So those are my two big L&D go-tos. But I also watch Bloomberg. So I kind of talked about that earlier, that you need to
Hmm.
know what's happening in the world. And so watching things like Bloomberg and reading Harvard Business Review are things that give me that different thinking, right? So I may have been looking at the world through a very small lens if I stay in my space. But when I open my mind to things like Bloomberg and Harvard Business Review, now I'm stepping outside of that and I'm understanding context in a different way. For kicks, as well as just because I'm curious, also read the New York Times. I'm all the way down here in Atlanta, Georgia with our own newspaper, but
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
going to read the New York Times. And that's again to give me a different perspective because, we are very juxtaposed to the culture of New York here in the South and in Atlanta. So it gives me little entertainment, I'm gonna be honest, but it also gives me just breath and an opportunity to expand my thinking in a different way and to learn about another culture essentially.
Yes, I know, right? Yeah. Oh, you
um
just inspired me to do so too.
yeah, and but then I'm reading any and everything I can, everything from, and I'm not a mom, but how to be a mom in the workplace. Why? Because I lead moms, and that's
Mhm.
important to things that are like reimagining your learning experience. I believe I can't think of the author's name of that one right now, but that was like one of the books that really opened my mind to how to reimagine things. I'm also reading Unmasking AI so that I understand what's happening in that space and going to any and every forum, even if it sounds like a repeat of a past forum on agentic technologies right now, so that I
Mhm.
really understand what those things are and how they're
Yeah.
happening.
Unmasking AI, I've heard several mention that that's a really good one right now, really relevant.
And the author, Joy Boliami, I had to think about how to say her name well. I wanted to do it justice. She has podcasts too, and
Okay.
but what she talks about is she actually describes herself as an algorithm in poetry. And she considers herself a poet of code. To think about how she says it, I wanted to do it justice there. But she calls herself a poet of code. And when I first heard that, I was like, "Oh, goodness, here we go. It's another programmer conversation." She makes code fun, and I don't know how you
Oh,
can do that, but she
I
makes
know.
she makes
That's awesome.
technology and code fun. So, I would recommend reading or just catching some of her content because she knows how to engage. Um
Wonderful.
and from that, we as L&D professionals can learn some tips and tricks in her methodology. So, I read her for a couple of reasons and I watched her podcasts for those reasons because I saw her make information that is very, very much highly technical and droll fun.
Oh, wonderful. That's
Yeah.
definitely on my list then. Would
And
you recommend that book, or would you recommend a different book for someone growing into L&D leadership?
so for someone growing, and I'll peek over here, I'm going to go with Keith Bethune's Reimagining Design.
Reimagining design. And why is that?
The premise of the book is how to reimagine the thing that is most comfortable to you in a very different way. Why do I say the thing that's most comfortable to us? All of us have grown up now creating materials. Schools require it, college required it, your new job requires it. It's become comfortable, and we've become very rote in how we do things if we're using some of the big tools. Those tools are great. They help us to remember the things that we might have forgotten to attend to, clear objectives, overviews, discoveries, videos plus interactive click points, all of those things. But if you just stick to that, your information is stale. Even if it's new, it becomes stale. So, really, reimagining design is not necessarily telling you how to reimagine design, but challenging how you approach design. And that's so important. We should be challenging ourselves, whether you are a facilitator, an instructional designer, a knowledge content developer, whatever, website leader, newsletter creator, whatever your role is in that learning team, communications, every time you think about the project, you should be reimagining how you'll approach it for context, for relevancy, but also for that stickiness. In our current workspace, we talk about stickiness when it comes to customers all the time, right? But that
Mhm.
applies in our world even more so because everything we send out there needs to stick. It needs to resonate. It needs to have that thing that says that when I'm at home, I'm going to be thinking about that moment in the classroom where the poet of code told me told me the thing, right?
Yeah,
And if you'll notice, I only watched that podcast one time, but I still remember those words.
that's
And that's
wonderful.
what we need to
That
create,
stickiness.
that stickiness. So
Yep.
reimagining how we design our classrooms, how we design our enablement strategy, how we do change, how we do instructional design is so important.
Well, Demetrice, thank you so much for being on the show today. I truly appreciate your perspective, your insights that you brought to this conversation. I know our listeners are going to get a lot from it.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed it. It felt like a conversation. So thank you.
Good. That's the whole intention. That's what our listeners like to hear too. So, as a small thank you, Training Pros will plant 5 trees in your name with our company charity who plants trees around the world.
Thank you
So we've
so much.
planted, yes, we've planted over 5,000 to date, and we'll send you a certificate showing you where your trees are planted. So just a small way to show our appreciation.
Thank you so much. That means a lot to me.
And that's this episode of Learning Leaders Spotlight.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for the latest episode of Learning Leader Spotlight, interviews with corporate L&D leaders. You'll find links in the show notes to any resources mentioned on today's show. If you're enjoying our podcast, please subscribe so you never miss an episode and leave us a 5-star review.